NORML.buzz. Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Welcome back, everyone. 22 and a half after the hour, and today we've got some polling data to go over from Minnesota and Virginia. The Minnesota data comes to us by way of public policy polling. They have a survey that was commissioned by Minnesota NORML. The dates of the survey are January 18th through 21st, so very, very recent information. And I think it provides us some keen insight on legalization in the upper Midwest. Now, the usual question that they ask is whether or not marijuana should be taxed and regulated, or should marijuana be regulated like alcohol? This is the questions we've seen in the past, but now that we've got marijuana legalization in existence in 4 U.S. states and the District of Columbia, the poll questions are evolving a bit. And so in addition to just the numbers from this poll, I think it's interesting to note the phrasing of the questions and how the people are answering them. Their first question on legalization reads, do you think marijuana should be legalized and regulated in Minnesota like it is in Colorado, Washington, and like it will be in Oregon, Alaska, and Washington, D.C.? Now, that's kind of a weird way to ask the question from my point of view, and probably from your point of view. Being a listener to this show, you probably are very well aware of the fact that those 5 different legalizations are all quite different in how they propose to tax and regulate marijuana. In the case of Colorado, they chose to tax it at 10% excise, 15% sales, or maybe I've got that backwards, but 25% worth of taxation. They decided to allow people to grow their own marijuana and set a presumptive DUI limit at 5 nanograms of active THC per milliliter of blood. They have a vibrant and active medical marijuana regulation system that has been folded into their recreational system, providing one marijuana enforcement division that oversees all marijuana in the entire state. Now compare that or contrast it to Washington State, where they don't allow for home grow, where they have exorbitant taxation, 25% at 3 levels of production, where they have a unregulated medical marijuana system that is in open competition with their recreational system. They have hard caps, limits on how many licenses can be produced or distributed throughout the state. And localities throughout the state are banning these facilities. Then you take a look at the state of Oregon, which its marijuana legalization will be a flat tax of $35 an ounce, no limit on licensing, 4 levels of production, and retains the right of people to grow their own, and runs alongside a well-functioning medical marijuana system. And contrast that to Alaska, which is going to do a $50 flat tax, no limits on licensing, but doesn't have a well-functioning medical marijuana system. And then Washington, D.C. couldn't be more unlike the others in that it doesn't legalize marijuana markets at all. It has a grow and give system. You can grow marijuana, you can have marijuana, you can give it to others, but no pot shops. So when you ask a poll question, should we legalize it like 5 different places that have legalized it all differently? That seems like a weird question to me. But we have to take the perception of the average person taking the poll here. They don't know all of that detail. To them, the question just means, should we follow the first 4 states that have stopped treating pot like a crime? Now, if that's the question, to that sentiment, a plurality of 49% of Minnesotans agree, and just 44% are opposed to that idea. But we have the gender gap. Women are split 46-46 on whether or not marijuana should be legal. Men support it 51-43. But that's actually good news because a 5-point gender gap is a lot less than what we usually find in these polls. Another typical question, do you think Minnesotans should be allowed to consume marijuana for medical purposes? Well, it gets a lot more support. Over 3 in 4 Minnesotans at 76% support medical access to marijuana, with little difference in support by gender, race, age, or geographic region. Only Republicans showed significantly less support, and that was at 61%. And Native Americans, interestingly, showed far greater support. It was at 93% among Native Americans. Now, some other questions were interesting. One question asked whether or not marijuana prohibition was more effective than alcohol prohibition. 54% of Minnesotans believe that it is not any more effective than alcohol prohibition was. 52% of Minnesotans think that the people, not the politicians, should decide on marijuana's legality. And 51% believe that Minnesota's economy would benefit from the market legalization of marijuana. There was no demographic, age, gender, race, Republican, Democrat, that believed marijuana prohibition was more effective than alcohol prohibition. But women and Republicans were less likely to believe market legalization would help the economy. And finally, in Minnesota, a plurality of Minnesotans, 46%, believes that not enforcing marijuana prohibition would make Minnesota safer by allowing police to concentrate their efforts on real crime. But 40% disagreed and 14% were not sure. A majority of Republicans, 52%, African Americans, 55%, and Latinos, 54%, didn't think ending prohibition would make Minnesota any safer. And finally, the news out of Virginia. Recent poll shows that 71% of Virginia voters support decriminalization, 69% support medical marijuana.